Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present here at the conference. I'm Pontus Lindman. I'm a senior consultant at Medicine, been active in e-health and healthcare industry for 2 decades. In C3-Cloud, I've been the leader of Work Package 5 Patient Empowerment and also been the consortium innovation manager. Medicine is a Finnish e-health company, and our main product is Medicine Suite, which is a comprehensive e-health platform, and this is what we have used as the basis for the patient empowerment platform in C3-Cloud. It's something that's come about in over these 20 years that I've been active in Medicine, and it's now a mature platform that we deliver in many European countries at the moment. One key aspect of the platform is configurability, so that it's easy to adapt to different uses. My talk today, over the day, you have heard about the holistic C3-Cloud solution, about the care planning, the CDS modules, and I will be talking about the patient empowerment platform aspect, how we use the integrated care plan and feedback the information from the patient. But before we go into this about the patient empowerment platform, I wanted to show you this. I think we are coming from an era where the market was flooded with single purpose solutions, and it's quite a chaos if you expose people. I think quite inspirational your speech as well, that we must not expose too much complexity on especially on fragile people, and this is an example of the frustration that you have. Both as a patient, you get frustrated that the user experience can be very different when you do different things, and also for clinicians, health professionals, loved ones who are trying to help, it can be very tedious to set up things when you have to do the same thing multiple times. So we see this as quite a problem, and the obvious solution is to have one patient empowerment platform that can serve multiple purposes. This is just a quick highlight of different areas where our solution has been or is used. And C3-Cloud with the 4 main conditions is quite a good example of where you need to have that flexibility to do different things. I want to focus on 4 key areas of the patient empowerment platform where it really can bring benefit to the users. The first one is sharing information with the patient, and I think especially in C3-Cloud, I come to the revelation that there's so much information around, and the question is how in my experience and view, people are overwhelmed, and I think here we in C3-Cloud have managed to help quite nicely people by bringing about this one unified view where you both combine the personalized elements, and by this I mean care plan elements, goals and activities, and also in the same view you already bring in this common information materials that have been selected for the patient. I think in your speech you brought up that this is a heterogeneous group, and I think over and over also in this talk I will come to that topic, that the integrated care plan is a magnificent tool so that you can personalize and focus for each patient individually on their needs. The second element is the communication with the patient, and Mustafa already mentioned in the demo part about messaging, which is quite a traditional way of you write messages. it's an excellent tool when you don't have the luxury of meeting in real time in person. But what we are seeing at the moment is a rapid change in how you use modern technology in the healthcare segment to communicate with the patient. Not only do you use these text-based messaging solutions that also our solution includes, but more and more we see the adoption of video appointments. You can see here on the screen an example where a health professional and a patient can meet at a distance. I think in these special times that we are living now, we are seeing quite rapid adoption of enabling this type of tools. The second thing in communication that modern technology brings about is that with mobile devices and the cameras on these devices is that the patient can take, for instance, pictures. You must have already demonstrated that you would take pictures of a meal. You can take pictures of a wound, or you literally anything you can take a picture of and share it to a health professional. And maybe the third really cool thing that's happening is the adoption of real-time chat solutions. And I make the distinction with chat and video appointments is that video appointments are primarily used as a schedule tool to have health professionals who tend to be busy, so that you make an appointment like you would go to the clinic, but you do it online. But with real-time chat, it's more used so that you have on the spot, you have, for instance, nurses who discuss some unexpected thing, and with the chat tool you can make quick assessments and then you can direct them to further services. But there are many things in modern technology where communication is improved, and it allows you working at distance, and I think you can do it with a human touch because you are using the elements of speech and an image or this. You have the cameras there. I think Thomas brought this up also in his that we should more and more use audio and video in communication and not only text, and I think it applies well here. Collecting data is also an important aspect of patient empowerment. Is with the integrated care plan, you have your teams assign interventions activities to the patient that they should do, but it's important to also to capture data so that you know if those activities and interventions are having the desired effect. I'll talk about two different types of data collection. One is questionnaires and one is using sensor devices. The patient questionnaires in our solution, they are creating with an intuitive editor. I think Mustafa already mentioned we had created some 30 plus questionnaires to the C3-Cloud pilots, and there, given that it's an editor, you use the technical side is quite easy, and it allowed us to focus on designing the questionnaires. So there we have healthcare experts who think of what information do we need, and given that they have a tool that allows you to collect virtually any information that you may need or want as an organization, it provided the flexibility. I think Mustafa mentioned already that some were standard questionnaires like the modesty green that he showed, or there are the SF36, or there were many, but we also created some custom questionnaires where no standard questionnaire was available. One was, for instance, with Region Jämtland Härjedalen, who wanted to have a simple questionnaire to follow up medication side effects, which had a simple yes/no question at the beginning, and then if you answered yes, 2 follow-up questions to capture more detail about the difficulties that the patient had experienced. But again, here there was a good technical solution that allowed the experts and people designing the content to focus on what they want to achieve and not how they achieve this. I would also like to mention this reacting to changes, because data collection for the purpose of collecting data does not make sense. And in previous sessions, especially the CDS one, we heard about how those services can be used to make sense of the data. And it's quite important to have the tools in place where you don't take the data from the patient raw and just expose professionals to the data. So for instance, one quite nice and common pattern that you have here in the reacting is that you would have a rule first to detect that the patient's, for instance, sensor device value is out of limits, and you would notify the patient to take action, something that in the care plan you have agreed that if the values change in a certain way, take these actions. But if the patient doesn't take those actions or they don't have the desired effect, then you could have a second rule that would notify then the professionals that they need to react. And these type of tools, they have the power that they give you the possibility to both enable the patients to be do more self, and allow professionals to only react when it's needed, so that they don't have to screen through all, say, 200 or 1,000 patients, but can focus on the 5 who really need attention. On the topic of sensor devices, it's again an area where we can offer the patients a super easy user experience. If you take, for instance, a scale, and the patient has our device kit, the patient steps on the scale, it takes the weight, and you step off the scale, and then the technology takes care of the rest to upload the data to the centralized system and for further processing, like we discussed throughout the day. With the blood pressure cuff, it's similar. You put on the cuff and you press a button on the device. It takes the measurement, and then the kit takes care of the uploading and processing that data. So it's a super easy user experience, and this enables data collection on a large scale that would you put the patient to manually enter data, for instance, on a daily basis, it's not fun for the patient, and I think quite many would stop quite quickly to do this. Just to highlight the power of the patient empowerment platform, I'm here put up an example from a real case. You start by having all your patients fill in a questionnaire. Based on the results of that questionnaire, you decide that some need monitoring, so you assign a device kit only to those patients, and only some of those patients have then maybe there's, for instance, values that need to be discussed, that you change the plan somehow. Then you have the tools so that you can be in contact with the patient. So with the patient empowerment platform, you can at any time choose any of the tools available for any of the patients, and again match this with the heterogeneous group of patients like New described in the previous session. I wanted to bring up just a few of the challenges that we have encountered and have come up during the C3-Cloud project. You may notice that these have a social and organizational aspect. I think with the technology we have the tools to mitigate these, and I think it's the time for us now to focus more on how we deliver these solutions rather than on the technology itself. I put up here three. One is dealing with the difference in the patient's skills and knowledge is quite much aligns with what Nu said. I also bring up the risk of additional burden on health professionals if the use is not planned well. That if you simply take the current practices that you have and put them into a digital tool, then you could be in a worse place than you started with. And when you adopt a patient empowerment platform, it's also really important that you think of how you change the way you work. What can the patient do self? Where do you divide the work within the care team in a different manner? And I also put up here the risk of information overload if the care plan is large. And I think the integrated care plan puts the spotlight on that, especially multimorbid patients, that there's so much information relevant to their situation. And this is something that needs to be taken into account when you offer a patient empowerment platform to patients. Some of the solutions to mitigate these challenges, the integrated care plan is really important to be able to personalize the information, the planned activities, and what you expect the patient to do. I want to bring up enabling loved ones who can act on behalf of the patient. I think this was something Theo mentioned already in his opening speech when he had that story of the patient living far away from the children, but with modern technology, this is something where the loved ones can participate and help and act on behalf of the patient when the patient's skills do not allow the patient self to be the active participant. I stress the importance of centralized planning of organizational workflows and the content. This was something we were very much on in the project, that how do we adapt the content to be used with such tools. And as I think Nu called out for system developers and designers also to react, and one of my responses to her is that something we work very much with is that how can we provide patients with focused views with only the minimum amount of information at one time. In the demo, you already saw that on the front page from the whole care plan, there were only parts that were lifted up to the main page, so that the patient would have focus on these elements specifically at a specific given time. But here we run again into the challenge of how do we determine what information is relevant when you have a huge amount of information. And I think this is an area where we have much work to do together all for the future. I will end here.
Pontus.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pontus.